Okay, go ahead, teacher.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar on to PhD or not to PhD. That is the question. We have 5 panelists here. Xiaolin from Texas Instruments, Pei-Yun from National Central University, Stephen Callender from Intel Labs, Arunan from Oregon State University, and Mariam from University of Twente, the Netherlands. I'm going to quickly go over our format for today. We have opening, and then Avni and I, who are the moderators, are going to do a pro and a con slide on a PhD degree. Panelists will then present a slide each, and then we'll have a moderated and an audience Q&A, followed by closing remarks. My name is Deeksha Lal. I'm currently an RFIC designer at PSemi. I did my PhD from NC State in 2019. I'm one of the organizers as well as the moderator, and we've been organizing this webinar as part of IEEE Women in Circuits. I'm also an advocate for lost PhD students. Avni, do you want to say something about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and taking out your time to help the students who are deciding whether they want to pursue a PhD or not. My name is Avani, and I finished my bachelor's from BITS Pilani, India. And currently, I'm a PhD student at UC Berkeley with Professor Ali Niknejad. And we are excited to conduct this webinar today.
Thanks, Avni. I'm going to move on. I think, Avni, your slide is next. You want to speak a little bit to the slide?
Yeah. So starting off with the pros of PhD degree, I am currently in my 3rd year, and by talking to senior students and also some new students, and of course consulting my advisor, I've come up with a perspective which I will be sharing. I think one of the biggest pros of a PhD degree is ability to work on cutting edge technology and risky problem statements. What I observed was in industry, most of the problem statements that are tackled are from the product perspective, which has to go in the market pretty soon. And so the problem statements tend to be a little bit less risky and more market friendly. Versus in PhD, because you don't have a requirement to produce a customer friendly product, you can work on really risky problem statements, which maybe potentially have products in 10 or 15 years down the line. So that is one aspect of the PhD that I like the most. And another one, which actually stems from the first one, is the depth in knowledge. Because when you're working on a risky problem statement, I think a lot of the knowledge you have to figure it out. So asking why questions and reaching to the source of the problem or figuring out the limitation of the state of the art gives a depth in knowledge. And I think Doctor of Philosophy, as it is rightly termed, you come up with your own philosophy to design some circuits, for example, or you can come up with your own philosophy to basically conduct research, which is a very transferable skill to any different role you take, not just a PhD student. And of course, there are teaching and related career opportunities. When you're a PhD student, you get to teach students alongside a professor. And also in the future, the doors are open if you want to become a professor. There are also immigration benefits for many people who want to get green card in the US, for example. PhD could be helpful. And the last but not the least pro of the PhD, I would say, is networking opportunities, going to conferences. And while you work on your PhD, you go through the ups and downs with your peers and form lasting friendships. So these are the pros I see for PhD degree. I would hand over to Diksha to discuss the cons of PhD degree.
Thanks, Avni. Those very, very cool things you shared. I'm going to now discuss the cons of a PhD degree. And I'm going to go into detail. I'm not trying to be depressing about it, but we usually don't talk about this. So I'm going to go into a little bit of a detail. So in a PhD happens in an academic environment, and there is a academic hierarchy where PhD students are almost at rock bottom. There's no HR to fall back on. There's a power and control dynamic. Like you are at the bottom, and then you have your advisor and all these other people you need to deal with. The situation can be sometimes easily exploited, especially for immigrant students who have visas that depend on your current uh, learning or university situation. It has a dark side to it sometimes where you feel stuck, that I'm in this hierarchy and I'm at the bottom. And where do I go and for help, and what can I do? The second thing is funding and graduation uncertainty. Everyone who's ever been in a PhD program is familiar with the question, when are you going to graduate? So, so that can get pretty frustrating. There's always funding uncertainty in one form or the other. You're changing projects. And unlike in the industry, changing jobs as a PhD student is hard. There's shame and fear surrounding changing advisors if they're not a good fit. It might be very hard to find a new one. And at the same time, you're like, I've already invested so much time in this degree, which is already going to take a half a decade, and I'm now going to spend more time changing to someone else. Um, Advisorship versus mentorship. Advisorship may not always equal mentorship. PhD asks for, sometimes people ask you to do independent research, which is often confused with you need to perform high quality research without adequate training or mentorship. So you may feel lost, and you may come out of your PhD degree not sufficiently trained and unprepared for the needs of a full-time job in the industry, because you're working sometimes in a silo. You're working in a very small space, very specific, very in-depth, and learning, and you're learning, sure, but you may not be getting adequate training. There's significant stress and mental and physical health impacts that people don't talk about. Like I said, everyone's always asking you, when are you graduating? And every morning you wake up, you're asking yourself, when am I graduating? And that can get pretty stressful. You are on a visa if you're an immigrant, and again, it's directly related to when you going to to how you're continuing your studies, your research topic, and your experience in a group, your advisor, your university. All of those experiences may not be as rosy as they're advertised, and there's a shock uh, that everyone outside looking in is like, oh wow, this is so cool, you're at the top of the academic degree anyone can do. But on the inside, it's a very different story that you're not able to share with people. And obviously you have pressure to publish and write, and all of that. There are also financial trade-offs. PhD students in the US make 15 to 30K a year. And according to the IEEE 2023 US salary survey, the median income of engineers within 2 to 6 years of their last degree earn 100K on average, that's the median income. So you can imagine if you're in a PhD degree for 5 to 6 years earning 30K versus earning 100K and then getting bonuses and investing and retirement plans and all of that. So there are significant financial trade-offs. And once you come out of your PhD degree, you don't get a 50% or 100% bump in your salary. It's probably like 10, 20% compared to a fresh master student. So yeah, so that's all I had on the cons of a PhD degree. So we're going to now move on to the panel, and I have everyone here who's going to present a slide that they've prepared for a couple of minutes. First, we have Pei-Yun. Pei-Yun, you want to talk to your slide?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay, let me briefly introduce my career journey. I agree all mentioned about pros and cons of a PhD degree. So in my career journey, after I completing my master's degree, I began with 4 years in the industry as an R&D engineer. During this period, I gained valuable experience and insights into practical applications. Then I decided to go for a PhD degree. This allowed me to dive deep into signal processing and VLSI implementation for wireless communications. Following completion of my PhD, I changed the role into a professor at National Central University. In this capacity, I could share my experience, mentor students, and even conduct research that really attracts me. And in 2015, I collaborate with Taiwan Space Agency on the topic of synthetic aperture radar. This is a whole new world of knowledge to me, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to collaborate with them. After 7 years, this opportunity paved the way of a new chapter in my career. Currently, I'm on the secondment to Future Technology for developing synthetic aperture radar. And on the other hand, in 2018, I joined in the project related with risk evaluation of cardiovascular disease by wearable devices through AI techniques. I collaborate with doctors of National Taiwan University Hospital and MediaTek until now. So we keep a long-standing collaboration. And according to my experience from my career journey, I have the feeling that one of the most rewarding aspects of a PhD is the freedom to engage in your intellectual exploration and pursue research that truly ignite your passion. So currently, I'm still on the road of exploration in my career. But I would also like to remind that this road to adventure is not always smooth. We have to keep an open mind to confront challenges and even failures in the journey. So that's all my sharing. Thank you.
Thanks, Pei-Yun, for sharing your thoughts. Next, we have Stephen.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so my name is Stephen Callender. I am a research scientist in Intel Labs. A bit of background about myself is that I was born in New York and received my bachelor's degree from Columbia University. At that juncture, or maybe midway through my bachelor's, at Columbia, I was under the tutelage of Professor Yanis Savitas, who is an excellent researcher, experimentist, just scientist, and also just mentor. So that was also very inspirational for me to pursue my passion in being like kind of the best mentor and teacher, which is why I set out to go for the PhD. I had aspirations to be a professor. So I figured, okay, let's go to the place that trained one of the best mentors I know, and I wanted to go to UC Berkeley. So received a PhD at Berkeley and graduated in 2015 and went immediately to Intel Labs. So went straight through academia, hit the, I guess what can seem as the peak, but I think there's still more to do for education. And then I went into industry. Just a few things I'd like to leave you with maybe is for how my PhD helped or maybe did not help me get where I am. I do feel it helped me develop or hone my skill sets for solving complex problems, and also sharpen my ability to not prematurely give up on a problem. The other thing, which I think Awani touched on for the pros of a PhD, is that it helped me build a strong network. And that network really were my peers in grad school, those that were, as I like to say, in the trenches with me. Because those students also go out to a diverse set of positions in industry, and that can help your career going forward. So I think that network that you get to build in the PhD is very valuable. What it did not teach me, though, is how to navigate industry. So once I entered Intel, I think there was a whole new mindset shift on basically what is my contribution here and how do I navigate this system. And the PhD doesn't really prepare you for that. You're not there just to problem solve in industry. If you really want to be successful, you really have to kind of navigate some non-technical items, I say. Lastly, advice for if you're considering a PhD, I would say just think hard about what you want your career path to be. Don't just look short term, but look 15, 20 years down down the road. Because as you mature in life, it's harder. It gets harder down the line to switch back to PhD. So think long term in terms of what doors can be open for you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Next, we have Mariam.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor to be here and share my experiences. As I've been kindly introduced before, my name is Mariam Dodange, and I've done my bachelor and master in electrical engineering back in Iran. And I've worked on transceivers for brain implants and wireless power links for them. And currently I'm pursuing a PhD in IC Design Group at the University of Twente in the Netherlands that is supervised by Professor Bram Natta. Well, of course, I'll also start to share some pros and cons of doing a PhD, and please have it in mind that these are my own experiences. It might be different with different people. And I think a lot of good points have already been mentioned, so I try to quickly go through them. What I've experienced so far, because I've already started to look for jobs also a little bit, so I can also maybe shine some light in that regard. So what I really loved about being a PhD is that you can actually develop your character in so many aspects because you become independent, you will have a lot of innovations, you learn how to be organized, you're supervising students, so you know how to lead people. I think that's a really valuable opportunity because you have this place to grow in so many aspects. The other thing that has also been mentioned is the strong network that you can create, and you also have this opportunity to make yourself known by the publications you have, by the conferences that you go, and that would definitely help you also in the state of finding a job, because then you know people, you know who to reach out to, so it would definitely make your life easier if you're looking for jobs also. And then what I've experienced so far is that you can also be in a strong position while you're negotiating and looking for jobs because you've already proven how capable you are sorry, during your PhD, and people know you, they know that you can be trusted, and that can actually put you in a strong position. So you can already maybe start as a senior if you've done a good job, and that would be, I believe, a benefit. And the other thing is that you can gain experience in a lot of aspects. What we do is that you start from idea to design, measurements, verification, PCB, everything. So I've seen that it's highly appreciated also by the companies because it shows that you can be assigned to different projects if needed and you are capable. That's also a really good thing because mainly in industry, people might be focusing on some design of a block, and it rarely happens that you can experience and learn everything. So these were all the good parts, but regarding the parts that are difficult is that in spite of having your supervisors and colleagues with you, I feel that you can be alone and also under a lot of pressure sometimes, specifically for tape outs, as you might all know. And of course, people are there, but you're the only one that you're supposed to deliver some results in a limited time. So that can be really tough at times. And the other thing that I really don't like is that unexpected problems and obstacles can happen at every stage, and you cannot really rely on the time that when you will be actually done, and you cannot really plan for that. So that's something that might bother you. So it might take longer than expected. But just to sum up as a suggestion is that, as also mentioned before, you should really consider your character goals and ambitions for your future career before choosing to start a PhD. But you should also remember that hard work always definitely pays off. So don't be afraid in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you for your thoughts. Next, we have Xiaolin.
Hello, everyone. My name's Xiaolin. I'm sorry I put one slide, not maybe put related with the topic. This is my general purpose bio. And I've been working in TI more than 25 years. And during my whole career is all on what we call the tech ladder. That is an area you can call more like instead of business oriented, is more engineering-oriented track, career track. I don't have a PhD. I do have 2 masters, one from EE and one from computer science. So I started with that, not intentionally. Actually, I want to do a computer science PhD, but because of family reason, I have to change university. So I end up with 2 masters instead. But what I can share with you is since I joined TI, I'm in the research leg of the industrial company. And during my whole career, I hired more than 50 PhDs from a variety of universities. So maybe my feedback is mainly from industrial side, pure industrial side, for what I think a PhD can bring to you. First of all, I believe it is a tough decision because it is a 4 to 5 years additional investment purely on your side, right? And when you make a decision to get into the PhD track, unless you are already clear you wanted to be joining academy, which that's your entry ticket, so you have to get. But when you're talking about industrial, it become much tougher decision because, as you know, majority of jobs in the industrial areas, including Texas Instrument as a old semiconductor company, we have, let's say, very limited number of jobs are must have for PhDs. And areas of those type of jobs cover, for example, semiconductor process technology. So almost every people there are PhD. And also the organization where I am in, which is the corporate R&D organization, we're more like maybe a little bit more pragmatic than the national lab, which targeted towards our own product R&D, but we're at least need to be 3 years or 5 years ahead of market in what we do. So those type of positions require somebody like you guys just mentioned, you know, especially Mary, you mentioned a lot of unique characteristic that the candidates grow during 4 years, 5 years PhD training. The mindset, the startup mindset, let's say, all you do whatever solving a very complex problems, right? And especially when this complex problem is not handcrafted engineering, it is also built on top of multiple in-depth theoretical foundations. Those are the people we see PhD truly shining. But when you shining, you have much shorter cut get into the higher rank inside the tech ladder or inside your career path. And the second one is networking. The networking is not just within company networking, it's intercompany in the industry, right? Level networking. As mentioned, if you have a PhD, do get the privilege to participate in a variety of conferences. I just went to the ISCC, see how the networking played a part in this whole thing. And also you have the opportunity maybe to be more recognized at the industry level, not just the company level.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I also want to mention it's not the cons or something, it's the mindset, right? PhD gets you ready from solving a complex problem, in-depth, which requires in-depth theoretical learning curve to the point that you're able to publish the paper. For example, the paper you published in ISCC has this comparison of this is the art, right? How much
Right.
power, how much gain, this is you. But I just want to say PhD does not prepare you from what you published to a final commercial valuable product, which actually you serves the people's life. You help to improve people's life, right? Make semiconductor more affordable, make energy much more efficiency from that perspective. It's another big learning curve. And that part of the learning curve, I see some PhD candidates did a wonderful job to transition from there to grow further, become not just a theoretical analysis, a paper, and also are able to generate the product that bring the benefit to the world. And some of them, because of whatever reason, not having a very smooth path going that direction. And really, which means just stay within the comfort zone, maybe even have difficulty to grow in industry space. So I really think it's individual dependent. What is the passion and what is the type of career you are dedicated to and what type of the work, even when they say industry, right? Industry is broad, but what specific type of work you're going to do? Are you going to do the algorithm work or process technology or high level, highly complex circuit design, which let's say terahertz, RF, those challenges, very extremely challenging work, or you are more like a handcrafting, get things done. So it depends on what you are passionate about. I guess there is no right or
Yeah.
wrong answer. And but I just want to provide my side of the industrial side of the, thought.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Xiaolin. That was very interesting to hear from you. Little different perspective. Next we have Arun.
Thanks, teacher. Thanks to the women in circuits for organizing this. Teacher, Bani, great job putting this together, and thanks for the invitation. So I'm Arun Natarajan. I'm a professor at Arunan State. I grew up in India, did my bachelor's at IIT, came to the US for a PhD at Caltech. Went to IBM Research, which was a job that you could get only with a PhD, and then became a professor, another job you can only get with a PhD. So to PhD or not to PhD? Well, that speech is taken from Hamlet, and he's actually asking, life is so miserable, so is it better to die? So fortunately, PhD is not such a critical decision. Now, it can certainly be miserable, but I'm happy to report that most of the times it's not. It's a reasonably good experience. So given that, is it a good decision? Or I should ask, was it a good decision for me? For me, the answer was a clear yes, because the things that I value in my life are mostly about being pushed out of my comfort zone and trying to get new experiences. And a PhD did that. So it wasn't just after the PhD, but I enjoyed the process of the PhD. It was tremendous personal and professional growth in a new country with a great set of peers. My network grew organically. So it was a great process. And the PhD then opened career doors for me that led to more new experiences, more growth. So overall, I would say it was a good decision. Now, so I read a book when I was much younger, and the book began with the statement of, I'm paraphrasing, but what is good and what is not good? Do we need to ask other people these things? And the thesis of the book is that all of us have an instinct for quality, an instinct for excellence, and we know when we have done excellent work or when we have made good choices. So I would say follow that instinct, because in general, I think it's worth spending some part of your life acquiring expertise, deep expertise in a position where the tasks that you are asked to do are not related to your experience. So you're able to access problems that are more than your level of experience. Now, this can be a startup, this can be a PhD. Now, usually this opportunity will involve risk. It'll involve financial sacrifice, and at least money cannot be the primary goal for that period of time. So in general, I think of this as a working for yourself period in your career. And I think people should try that for some period of time. Now, with any risky opportunity, there'll be, there's uncertainty, and the way to mitigate that is to due diligence, right? So you try to find out how the PhD funding model actually works in the country that you intend to pursue your PhD in. Talk to people about the problems, talk to people about, advisors, labs. But in spite of all this, anticipate that there will be ups and downs. I certainly had, issues. I'd say I came close to changing tracks in the first year, but then I found a nice problem and things worked out well. But in general, I think figuring out the right questions to ask can take some time. And for some people, that means getting some work experience so that you have the confidence and background to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I'd say that, for this question, I could take the easy way out and say it depends, right? Which is the right answer.
Uh-huh.
But I think overall, if you're doing a purely technical career, I'd say that it makes sense because it upgrades the level of problems you can access. If your interests are more along a career that has both technical and not technical interests, the answer is probably a maybe. There are other paths to get to those positions. But again, I would generally say that spend some time in your life working for yourself, whether it's a PhD or through some other opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks, Arun. Thanks for sharing your perspective. I think that's everyone. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go to the panel. So I'm going to start with a question to the panelists. So how does a fresh PhD student compare to someone with an MS and 5 years of work experience? Arun just mentioned work experience. And how does either path affect financial return of investment? And can we, maybe I'll go to Stephen first, most recent or one of the more recent PhD grads here. What are your thoughts on that, working with someone who's a PhD or master's with WorkX?
Good question. Thank you, Diksha. My opinion may be that I think first, there's no blanket statement here. Every individual is going to be different, but in general, I feel you'll get a bit more variance for a master's with 5 years of experience in terms of their ability to drive a problem on their own and also give valuable feedback on maybe course correction. So being able to grab the wheel of a problem and let them work independently is usually what you want to look for, at least in a research organization. And a master's with 5 years experience may have more variance around that, where I feel a PhD just by nature and experience in, again, that individual path that they've gone through, they've naturally been groomed to grab the wheel. And also, I guess one last thing is, maybe it's controversial, but whether there's a mindset difference with the master's with experience versus a PhD, on whether you're a soldier versus a general. And it's a matter of, again, leadership. I think there are certainly master's students with experience that are great leaders, and there are PhDs that are poor leaders. But I think, again, that variance on mindset, you might get more of a leadership mentality when you have a PhD. But again, no blanket statements.
Thanks. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for that. What are your thoughts on that, Pei-Yun? I guess a little bit of the different world experience from Asia.
Okay, I think a master with 5 years experience may good to have some practical experience for real world applications. But for a PhD, the PhD has the technical to some skill to analyze difficult questions or to open a new world of areas that everyone has not visited before. So I think it's also a problem of mindset. So in certain condition, maybe we need experienced engineer to handle this problem quickly. So maybe in this case, an master with 5 years experience is better to handle this case. But in some case, especially for some startup company, maybe we need some experts to explore a new area. So in this case, maybe a PhD is much more suitable. So I think it depends on the situation. But anyway, the capability and the strengths is the most important to decide the final selection. So I think no matter a master or a PhD, we need to establish our capability and to put ourselves more resilience to the environment and to new challenges.
Thanks for your perspective, Pei-Yun. I'm going to shift to Xiaolin because Xiaolin has an outside-in view of, hey, I have 2 masters, but now I'm hiring all these PhD students and a variety of other people. So what are your thoughts on that?
I never compare a fresh PhD with someone already in the job for 5 years because it's not a fair comparison, right? If I'm looking for a job that the current master degree people or under even did it for 5 years, and I always ask myself why I need a PhD to replace that and have a fresh training. But on the other hand, all the product development or project I'm having, each individual role is different. Some role is I have to have someone with a PhD level training to do it. And examples are those algorithms, right? When I try to come up with from nothing into some kind of algorithm, which will solve the problem, which is the core of problem solving, need a lot of simulation, need a lot of industry cutting edge study, and need a lot of even competitive analysis with existing art. I think PhD is because you're trained for that kind of mentality and mindset in the first place. And versus a fresh master come in, we have to train them to do all this. So that is the type of work I would let the PhD to do.
Okay.
But when that is already, I need to implement it into a circuit, into software, into a system. I may not need a PhD, right? So people with 5 years experience can do much better job in that case. So it is, I never have that kind of comparison.
That is a very interesting way to put it. Depends on the job role. How about you, Arun? Working in a startup and working as a professor, you get a bunch of master students and then they become PhD students and then they go somewhere else.
I echo what everyone's saying. I mean, I have been on both sides where I've, gotten master's students and they've done PhDs with me, and I've hired students as well, or engineers into design roles. It's very role dependent, and you're usually evaluating people, and relative choices based on people aren't based on resume, right? The resume only gets you in the door. So now, do both resumes get you into the door? Probably, right? And once you're in the door, after that, it's just individual comparison. So it's kind of hard to say.
Okay. So the vibe I'm getting is master's plus 5 years versus PhD is more where are you going, and then
what you've been doing in that time. Yeah.
right, how do you get in, and then everything's up to how you perform. Okay. Mariam, I'm going to come to you in this next question, which is related to my con slide. So you join a PhD, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do cutting edge research. I'm going to get published in a magazine. I look so cool. I have the topmost degree ever. And then the honeymoon period ends and you're in your second or third year and reality settles in. You're like, okay, maybe my advisor is busy or it's a toxic relationship. Your funding has run out. You are stuck on a problem and you don't even know if it's solvable. Maybe there's no answer, but that's not what the publishers want to hear. You keep waking up and everyone's like, when are you graduating? You need to move on with your life. You're questioning your life decisions, and your peers, meanwhile, the guys who decided to go to masters, they're like traveling the world and spending money, and you're like, I'm here. I am with like 20K a year. So what has your experience been? And I'm sure you went through these questions at some point. And what is your advice to someone who might be facing this?
Yeah. Thank you for the interesting question. Well, as you also mentioned, what I've experienced is that PhD has been a roller coaster of emotions, actually. So there's one day that you have an idea, everything looks perfect, and then you're happy, and then there is the next day that nothing works and is proven to be, I don't know, not working, and then you feel super exhausted, and then you lose motivation. So it's changing all the time, and it's a good thing, because then you realize that, okay, you have a tough day, but it's gonna be a better day. So you sort of realize how to deal with these sort of things. But there are some problems that you might face, as you also mentioned. And I think the most important thing is that you should have this ability to discuss it with the related people like your supervisor. Because some of the PhDs, when they face a problem, they think that it's a matter of weakness if they tell or let their supervisor know that you're facing difficulty, you're under so much pressure. But I believe that actually it's a sign of strength, that you know when to reach out for help if you need that. So there are some problems that can be solved if you literally discuss it. So if you start discussing and be completely open and honest with your supervisor regarding your current status, what are the things that are bothering you, you realize that there might be some solutions. So those are some of the problems that can be solved if you're courageous enough to ask for help. There might be some others, like you might face some problems with the supervisors, as you also mentioned, or all of these things. And I believe that if that's the case, because in some cases it might not be solvable, and I think you should also be courageous enough to then choose another path, to be completely honest, because not all the situations have a clear answer, and sometimes you realize that, okay, it's not at all what I expected. It's not just that I'm under pressure or things like that. It's just way off from my imagination, and I really don't like it. Then I think that it's okay. You're going to be alive for 100 years, let's say. But then you've lost 2 years in here. It's fine. You've also learned something. You can choose other thing. But regarding the financial perspective, I believe that you shouldn't have this short term on your mind, because, okay, you might think that you're under so much pressure. People are out there making a lot of money without having a PhD. That is true, but you should also think about your goals, because I believe that if you've gone for a PhD, later on, you shouldn't settle for any ordinary jobs or company, to be honest. You should really know your value and then go for the jobs that acknowledge you. And that's tough to find such a position, to be honest. But if you succeed to do, then you realize that it opens a lot of opportunities later on in a long term, that you can actually progress a lot. You can have your own research team, you can be a project leader and things like that. So that you might end up in a better position in a long term other than, I mean, of course, it's not 100% for sure, but that's something that might happen. So these were the points that were coming to my mind actually in that regard.
Thanks, Mariam. I like that. I like that you brought up be able to talk to other people, especially your advisor, and be able to say, speak up, and then maybe make a change in your life. If the PhD is not it, you could graduate with a master's, go somewhere else, find a different advisor. There are options out there. Arun, have you seen this mid PhD crisis in your PhD students, and what have you done? What advice have you given?
I have, of course, had to deal with these kind of situations. I'd say overall, the major challenge that I perceive, again, I'm speaking from an advisor rather than from a student perspective, is that the PhD is quite often the first time people are being exposed to a completely unstructured problem. It isn't a midterm where there are, specific topics that you have to study, and it's a closed boundary condition problem. So when that unstructured problem first starts, hitting people, that usually causes, it causes some discord. So dealing with that requires some mental resilience on both sides, on both the advisor and the students and patients to work through the problem. So that part happens fine. And I would actually generally just completely endorse whatever Mariam said. There are some problems that are not solvable. And in that case, I think students should have the confidence to make decisions that made sense for them and not think that, oh, I've spent 3 years and this is a lost time. There is no such thing as lost time if you've been doing, if you've been working hard, you have accumulated something in those 3 years. So that shouldn't be the decision-making process. But I mean, also, I think I would also say that there is something like an end of PhD crisis also, because many students at the end of a PhD feel like they've not done what they intended to do. And right after you submit your defense, you finish your defense, there is a bit of a downtime. You think, was this it? I wanted to do more.
Yep.
And it takes some time after that to feel like you did achieve something. So yeah, these are common situations, and being prepared for them just involves, I think, resilience, building resilience rather than,
There's no course. I wish there was a course somewhere. It's like
Yeah.
building resilience for this messed up stuff that's going to come your way in grad school. I wish there was a course.
The only thing I think, again, I would say is that, even a job requires this, but usually PhD is quite often a person's first job experience, and then it is so unstructured as well. So it
Right.
is
Yes.
a difficult place to be. I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. How do you feel about this, Pei-Yun, another advisor's perspective, but from Asia?
Yes, from the advisor's perspective, actually, I think if students has some difficulties, I'm glad that they are willing to tell me their difficulties. I think advisor also has the role of a mentor. Although maybe we cannot solve each question for every student, but when students in difficulties, we really like to help them. I think sometimes students may need answer or some heartwarming encouragement. So I will be glad if students like to share with me about their difficulties, and I will try to help them in this case. So I think the priority is very important. So every students need to know its priority based on its own value or defined by himself. And when difficulty occurs, I think ask for help is not a shame. Sometimes we are glad to help for students.
Yeah. I'm going to like to continue this point, and I'm very quick answers for this next question. I need to hand over to Avni in a minute. How do you navigate cultural differences in your professional life and academic life in a healthy manner? And I want to especially point out, advisor student relationships are culturally very different. Where I come from in India, your advisor is like God and you cannot say no to them. But then in the Western world, you're like, hey, my advisor is the dude next door. I can say no to him and we go to the bar later and get some drinks, which is a completely different way, like approach. And people, there's so much immigration, there's like people going back and forth. How do you handle these differences? And how do you encourage other people to cross this barrier over to either side? Free floor here, anyone who wants to speak up. I'm going to pick one up.
I'll add something here. I think, again, like when you're going, especially with advisors, but even with a manager, you're engaging in a relationship. And for any relationship, communication is key. So I think it's really, and when you go into a relationship, you also don't want to compromise your values. So I think it's important to go in early on and have that honest conversation, transparent conversation of your values, what they want to see out of this relationship and how the dynamics would be, and see if it's going to be a fit. Don't try to force it sometimes. But again, I know there are other constraints with the PhD where you're like, I have no other option. I need to be with this advisor. But I think even if there's frustrations, again, communication, having an outlet to voice it will help. But hopefully there's a channel for you to communicate with the advisor or manager and reach some alignment. If not, and if there's a lot of tension, I think it's your sign that you need to probably choose something else.
Yeah, it's a very good thought there. Thanks, Stephen. Pei-Yun, you were saying something.
Yeah, actually, I also think communication is very important. As a PhD student, everyone knows we need to presentation. So actually, presentation is also a communication skill. So if you can presentation well, then you supposed to be communication well with your advisor. Maybe you can try to find a way to communicate with the advisor, even the relationship is more like top and down. But sometimes I still think transparent communication is very important to achieve the goal or to solve some difficult case. So just try to telling the advisor with clear communication, use your presentation skills.
Yes. Thanks, Pei-Yun.
Maybe I want to add, I feel proactively reaching out to your supervisor. And if you do feel, because of cultural difference, right, you do feel some uncomfortableness, which is also happen in the industrial space, because we have all the different background, different culture, especially with your supervisor. I treat the synergy as with my boss, right? And come from, if you do a lot of things on the communication, understand presentation is important, but if you do feel a little bit uncomfortableness, maybe you don't know why, I always thinking reaching out proactively with your supervisor and have an open conversation will solve the problem instead of let it accumulate or wait your supervisor to notice there's something wrong. I think that's too late, right? Maybe the relationship is already got damaged. But in the first place, have an open, frank conversation is a great starting point, because almost every time I find an open conversation solve all the problem. Actually, you guys become into even closer to each other. as the result of that.
I think
And of course, that is my strong recommendation, because I do find individuals are not so proactively reaching out to open the conversation, especially somebody new, somebody, I don't know, your personality is introvert, whatever reason, but don't give you that as an excuse. Always proactively reach out.
I completely agree with you guys. The only thing that I experienced as a PhD student was I did not have a safe space. I did not feel safe to voice my opinion. And that's, I think, also on the advisor or the manager or the supervisor to show vulnerability on their side and then encourage the PhD students or the people they're managing that, hey, it's completely okay to not feel good today. It's complete. I understand you're not feeling okay. Feel free to share. And sometimes that safe space is missing and you're just keeping it all inside. But I agree, communication is key.
While I generally support everyone thinking that their advisor is God, I will say that specifically one of the things that got to keep in mind is that folks are hired into faculty positions not necessarily with the kind of non-technical skills that a manager has already been, for example, has been selected on the basis of those skills as well. So advisors, particularly early in their careers, are building their advising style. They are learning as much as the students are learning on the non-technical part of things. So cultural differences, I think you've hit upon a very important topic, because they are, if I think about it, one of the primary reasons for miscommunication or gaps, because both parties think they're being very reasonable, but it's just that their starting points are very, very different.
Right.
I completely agree with all the solutions as well, of course, but the one thing that I will add is don't do email, do in person. There is no way an email captures all the tones that you're trying to come across. And just don't do email. Set up a meeting, say what the meeting is about, give the person a heads up, don't sandbag them. But at that point, an in-person meeting is just way more effective and causes way less problems.
I agree with you. I also think you should go to the meeting and then have it in writing afterwards. Just
Sure.
have it in paper.
I mean, you can take notes, all that stuff is fine, but an initiation over email, I have never seen it end well.
Okay.
And whatever begins badly usually ends badly. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And also, don't write email when you're emotional. Don't write any email when you're emotional.
That is hard to do. That is a tough.
If you're still mad, I have heard this being said that if you're still mad in the morning, send the email then, right? Give it a night. Sleep on it.
Yeah. I'm going to hand over to Avni. Avni has some questions and also from the audience. Go ahead, Avni.
Yeah, I really like this discussion, getting a lot of perspective. So thank you once again to all of you for taking out the time, because I know you all are super busy people. So very grateful that you're sharing your perspectives here. So I have some questions that we crowdsourced from people before this webinar, and also some questions that attendees posted right now. Most of them I see are world after PhD and getting opportunities after PhD, and some of them are about how to navigate PhD. So I will start with the questions that are opportunities after PhD. I think, Arun, this question is for you. How did PhD help while founding a startup, and would you do something differently during your PhD to put yourself in a better position as a startup founder?
Certainly helps, of course. For example, just from the basic act of building a network and building credibility to, people that I can solve this problem, or I am an expert at solving this problem, right? So that credibility only comes, I would say, largely from a PhD. And I think it was said earlier as well, you build an identity for yourself that is away from your company. You have an identity, and that only again comes from came from my PhD. So in both cases, very, very useful. What would I do different? That's a good question. I think I would pay more attention to my network. I would work harder at interacting more, and I think my network was more technical than, let's say, on the venture capital side and things like that. And there are ways, even as a PhD student or, after your PhD, to be part of those networks. And I would have paid more attention there. But generally, a startup requires you to pivot a lot. What you end up doing is not what you end up starting thinking that you're going to do. And a PhD is pretty much the same thing. So it's really helpful to have that attitude that, yeah, tomorrow there'll be a solution. Let's not get too worried.
Okay. Next question. So people are asking, are there some roles that are PhD only in industry? And also, are there any hybrid academia industry roles? And how to access these roles? So the floor is open here. Whoever wants to take a stab at this question.
Can share something if possible. Well, I believe industry and academia can be two different words actually, because also specifically in during your PhD, you're focusing specifically maybe on something, and it's mainly for the research purpose, maybe not really reliable to be already in the market. But I think specifically in our field, even though we are working on different things, the tools that we're using are the same. So it's not like completely different, because also PhD is considered as a work experience in our field. So if you apply for a job, you can already say that you're 4 or 5 years of work experience. That's specifically, it might be, I don't know, a different case in US. I'm not sure about that, but I'm mainly talking about here in the Europe. Because you've used the tools, and what you're designing in another way is also the same design procedure, and everything is used in the industry. So it's not really two separate words, even though you've trained in a different way, but you still are capable of doing what industry people are doing at some level. Of course, more experience will come in the upcoming years. So I think it's a good thing about our field, but also just as that's an option that some people might not know, because I myself, I did my PhD with a collaboration with a company actually here in the Netherlands. So it was definitely for their market. They defined actually a question, and they wanted to do that if it's feasible or not, because a lot of companies, they also have this R&D department that sets the goal for the 5, 10, 15 years for them. And then they can actually use PhDs. So that's one thing. Here also, I think in some countries in Europe, like Netherlands and Germany, there are some, basically it's not a PhD, but it's a PhD in collaboration with industry, which is in 2 years, and it's called PD engineering, actually. So then you are not given the title of a PhD, but you're closely involved with the company, and the duration of this specific, let's say, degree is only 2 years. But then that can be also another opportunity for the people. You can just check it up that instead of doing a PhD, you can work closely with a company for 2 years. So it's university and company in a close relationship. That's also one thing that people might like to know and try out.
So maybe I can also add, when you go to industry, doesn't mean you completely cut off from academic, which is not true, okay? And examples are in the company right now, we have each year we're sponsoring certain amount of university programs. Actually, for us, for the project, which has, let's say, 40%, 30 to 40% of risk of advanced risk work, maybe we do ourselves, but if we go maybe 50 or even further, we actually work with university. So actually you can be, especially when you have a PhD, you have this research mindset, especially in specific area, we love to have you be the champion, to champion these project with the university. And also you still encourage to, if your work can be published, right, at a certain type of technology, you still encourage to participate the conferences, publish papers, or join international standard bodies. You team up with a lot of other with university or non-university, and take CHIPS Act as example. And we're direct sponsor for a lot of decision-making in what the CHIPS Act research funding should go with which university, with which industrial partners. So I just want to say, hey, it's not black and white academy, or they are closely collaborated together through industrial consortia, through individual company-sponsored university project or internships, supervising interns, and all kinds of things. So it is really mixed together.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
I would like to add one more. I think PhD has the problem-solving techniques. So no matter in academia or in industry, just exploit these capabilities so everyone can do well.
Yeah, I think I agree that the mindset is important and is a transferable thing. And as a current PhD student, I can attest that yes, there's a lot of collaboration from industry in terms of internships, or even having weekly meetings with the sponsors and things like that. And one thing I've seen my advisor doing is consulting for some startups and consulting. So I think that is like outside academia. So it's kind of academia and industry collaboration. Another question is, I think this also came up when panelists were discussing how to make a successful transition from PhD mindset to industry mindset. So maybe Stephen, I think you touched upon this during your slide. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, I'll keep this one short. I think whenever you're changing environments or you're in places that are unfamiliar, mentorship is important. So build your network within the new environment, reach out to folks that are in positions you want to be in, and just learn from them and learning how to navigate the new environment. I think the mindset that translates between the two is a growth mindset, knowing that even though the challenge is hard, you can accomplish it or overcome it. So that mindset is preserved, but in terms of the practical tools to navigate industry, it's very different than academia. Not very, but there are a lot of differences. I think mentorship within industry is important.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. And I totally agree with the mentorship point. I think personally, without mentors, I wouldn't even be a PhD student or wouldn't even get any internships or anything. And being successful requires a strong mentee-mentorship connection. In the interest of time, I will take one question. I see there are a lot of questions from the audience. I apologize that we are not able to take all of them. I try to combine most of them. So the question here is, during PhD journey, when you don't have a clear idea of your thesis, how do you keep yourself motivated, and how do you sort of converge on the problem statement that is going to be your thesis? So I think this might be more from advisor perspective question. So I request the advisors on the panel to comment on this.
So it's a joint problem, I would say, because if you don't have a clear thesis path, it's a problem for your advisor as well, right? But the the idea that I would say here is that it is quite common that this happens, and part of it is again a sense of the lack of structure, right? And so you have to take ownership of this to some extent and read more, right? I mean, read more literature to figure out a problem statement that made sense for you and communicate that to your advisor, right? And hopefully a good advisor then adds things back and gives you something in return, and together you can coalesce to something that made sense. But yeah, I don't want to take the risk of just waiting for your advisor to do it, because nobody owns your PhD more than you, right? I mean, so that's this was something that I had to sort of go through as well. And again, a lot of it comes from trying to solve the problem yourself, and then people recognize that effort and go beyond your advisor as well. Go to other people in the department, in the industry, in places, talk, try to find a problem. I once met a student at ISSCC who was asking every professor that they could see what was a good problem to work on, and just trying to figure out what the solution was to their issue. So yeah, can't think of anything other than work to solve this problem.
Thanks, Arun. Pei-Yun, would you like to add something?
Yeah, my advisor told me one way to figure out the solution or figure out the direction. So I think I can share with you all. So I also think reading is very important. So first, from the research topic that you are interested in, first read recent papers, and then read the highly cited papers. Then just list a table. So when you read one paper, just write down what kind of question or what kind of problem the paper wants to solve. What's the pros and cons that the paper criticized the prior arts, and what kind of solutions that the paper proposed. So from the complete paper, if you read more paper, you will find the direction or the problem, or the direction you want to figure out will converge. You will know what kind of solution or what kind of strategy that you want to try. So I think maybe just reading and then list the table to think about the whole picture. Maybe you can find the direction of your PhD research topic.
Thanks, Pei-Yun. And yes, I echo Arun's thoughts on taking charge of your own research and having the sense of initiative, not just while finding the problem statement, but while also solving that problem statement. And I really appreciate your structured approach, Pei-Yun, of finding out what the current literature says, and then what are the limitations, and then going ahead step by step from there. In the interest of time, we can only take so many questions. So I will wrap up the webinar now. Once again, thanks to all of the panelists, and echoing on Stephen's mentorship point, we request all of the attendees to join Women in Circuits, and there's also Cronus mentoring platform that SSCS has. I have personally taken advantage of this mentoring platform and connected to wonderful people, which transitioned not only as a professional connection, but also knowing them as a person, which I think helped me a lot. So yeah, if you are looking for mentors, this is a great platform, and we invite everyone to join Women in Circuits, not just women. We welcome everybody, and we appreciate perspectives from everyone. And yeah, I think that's the end of the webinar. Thanks all the attendees, and thanks Aisha for handling the logistics and everything.
Thanks everyone for joining. We enjoyed hearing your thoughts. Have a good rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you all. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day. Thank you for
Nice to-
organizing.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for organizing. Bye bye.
Bye.